for joining us, everyone. This is a feature that's going to be quite popular, I believe. It's certainly something that people have been asking for a while, and it's been in beta testing for quite some time because I just wanted to make sure it worked as well as we could before we launched it to the masses. I think before we jump into the new split mileage, I do a quick overview of what the current mileage works and how it works. So at the moment, when you go into price books, you've got one reference number for kilometers and you've got one price for kilometers. And in a shift, when you create a shift, you put 1 kilometer amount in. So it might be 50 kilometers, and that's it. There's no second kilometers or anything like that. And so there's a couple of challenges that come with that. One of the challenges is that you can only do either activity-based transport or provider travel on one shift. But there may be situations where you have both on one shift. You can only, when you have a group shift, that's when it particularly gets really difficult, because if you had 5 clients on the shift or 4 clients and you put 50 kilometers on a shift, it invoices each client 50 kilometers, which is obviously not ideal for invoicing. And that goes the same with carers. So if we were to put 3 carers on a shift and you put 50 kilometers on there, when you go to do your payroll and your timesheets, it's going to want to reimburse each staff member for 50 kilometers. So they're the challenges that we have. And the other challenge too is with kilometers, it will always just use the price book that's on the shift for the service. But in some cases, you may want to choose the price book that you want to use to charge kilometers separately, depending on the service agreement and stuff like that. So they're the challenges that we currently have with split mileage. So first, split mileage is a feature that's available to premium plans. So just to be clear, it's a premium feature. Along with the new forms management, incident management, published shifts, there's a lot of features that we're working really hard on, and we've invested a lot of development time and money as a company into that. So these features are on the premium plan. To enable it, what will happen, and we'll be turning this on shortly after the webinar today, is you can go to account and settings. And if you are on the premium plan, you will see down here, there is a section for advanced mileage settings. By the way, if you're not on the premium plan and that's not showing, you can change your plan by going into under account, there's a subscription setting, and you can change your subscription from there. I can't because my account doesn't have a subscription. All right, so account advanced mileage settings. So when you go to turn that on, it's really important that you guys understand that this is a permanent change, right? So we need you to watch the webinar that we're doing today. You need to understand the implications of what you're turning on, because if you turn it on, there's no going back, right? You're going to be using the new split mileage forever and a day. The reason for that is that it does have a large change in the way that our coding in ShiftCare works and the way that kilometers are stored against shifts. And so switching it back off would have really been a very hard thing to make it backwards compatible. So you do need to make a decision when you watch the whole of the webinar today. Is this a feature that we want to turn on? Is this a feature that we're going to use? And then if you do make that decision, you're going to have to stick by that. So I'm going to turn it on my account. So advanced mileage settings is now turned on. So the first thing I'll go through when you do turn on advanced mileage or split mileage is that the price books are going to change. So I've gone into my price book settings now, and you can see that there actually is no kilometer charge here anymore. So the place where it is, it's still there. It's just on a separate section. So there's a little tick box on it on every price book now that says show travel rate. So when you tick on that, it then shows you the kilometers stuff. So it's now got travel per kilometer, the charge, and the travel reference number, and then transport per charge and the transport reference number. And of course, that's referring to provider travel and activity-based transport, which it should say, if you tick on the little question mark, it says provider travel, activity-based transport. And I think I kind of assume that most people know this, but you should probably check your NDIS reference stuff. But provider travel is the kilometers when your carer is going to deliver a service and you need to charge the client for their time, their time and their kilometers. But we're talking about kilometers at this stage. We will talk about time later. So that's the kilometers for your carer to get to a shift and to provide the services that you provide. And then activity-based transport is, of course, the kilometers that your carer does while they're on the shift with the client in the car. So if it's community access, they're driving them around, that's activity-based transport. So they're the two differences there. So that's how you're going to do that. Now, you will have noticed that it already has codes and prices in there. We have, just like the rest of our NDIS prices, we have got them in the system automatically from the NDIS price guide. But it's important to note that prices, we've done it per the price guide, and the price guide doesn't have activity-based transport for a lot of services because they're not services that you're designed to be driving the client around in your car. So for example, assistance in supported independent living, it doesn't have a transport code in it or a price because it's supposed to be assistance in supported independent living in their SIL, not driving them around. And so I do know, and I have spoken to many providers that say, well, we still sometimes got to take them up to the doctors or up to the shops quickly. And so we do charge transport. And maybe you'll use a reference code from, say, Access Community to do that, because Access Community will have a transport reference number. You've got two options there. In the shift, when you create it, you can say, I want the kilometers to go against this price book for activity-based transport. Or you can just edit the activity-based transport code and put the code and the price into the supported living book if you want to. That's up to you. But as per when we import from the guide, we're going to stick to the guide because that's what the guide says, and we want people to be as accurate as possible. So that's the implications from a price book perspective. And I think it's really important when you turn on the split mileage that you do go into the price books and you do check all of them and make sure you're happy with the codes and the pricing, just to make sure everything's all good. Of course, if you are we have updated it to $1 since the new change, but if you are charging more than $1, you'll need to update that. And if you had previously had it at a high price on the old system before, it will still only be $1 now. You need to go through and check all your pricing to make sure it's all correct once you turn on this system. All right, so that's the price book side of it. How does it work on an actual shift? So from a perspective of an admin side, when you've got a shift, you're going to now see that there is no longer a mileage number down here. So before I put 50 down here, that doesn't exist anymore. Essentially what happens is you're going to have a couple of sections for mileage now. The first one is that you can see under David, the carer, there is a box here for travel mileage. So that's where your carer, and this is obviously, they're going to do this through the app, and I'll show you the app after this, but the carer can say, this is how many kilometers I need to be reimbursed for. So might be 50, might be 100. Underneath that, it's then got this invoice settings section. And so this is where you will be able to say, okay, I need to charge transport or activity-based transport or provider travel. Your carer will be able to go in when they're putting in that 50, they will then be able to, if they need to split it, they can split it, or they can put it all in. So they can say, yep, that was all 50 under travel. And then under transport, they can say, well, no, actually it was 20 kilometers to get there, but then I did 30 kilometers while I was on the shift. And you can see here that you can choose the price book that you're going to have the kilometers going against. So if there are anything that you need to do that's tricky, where you might say, okay, well, actually it's supported independent living standard, but I do want to charge the kilometers to supported independent assistance in supported independent living standard, but I need to charge the transport against Access Community. That's what I was talking about before, where you can actually choose which price book the kilometers go against. And you'll notice that I can't choose assistance in supported independent living in the transport section. And that's because that book didn't have a code or a price for the activity-based transport. So it's only going to show you price books that actually have activity-based transport codes available to use. That's how it looks in the shift. There is a travel time section. I'll come back to the travel time because I want to really just focus on kilometers right now. Let me show you, let me put in a shift. So I'm going to create a shift for myself for today. So I'm going to put it against a client and I'm going to hit save. And so I've created that shift and then I'm going to come into the app. Down the bottom here, we can see there's a mileage section here. And so I can click on that. So yes, that's the biggest thing I think. Before you turn this on, you need to train your staff that they are going to be putting mileage in differently. And I'm going to make a video this afternoon that we're going to put on YouTube because there is already a video on YouTube about how our carers can use the app. But we're going to make a special one for when you switch over to the new mileage. And it's just going to step them through how to do this. So we'll send that out with the email that we send out with the recording. So you click on mileage and then in there, this is where you say, okay, as a carer, I did 50 kilometers and the travel was 30 and the transport was 20. And we'll talk about travel time again later and notes, if any. Now, in my experience for people that have been doing the beta so far, this is the part that you're going to run into the biggest trouble because your carers, unless you specifically explain to them what each of these mean, they don't know. Even though they can click on the question mark here and it'll tell them, they still don't really understand the difference between travel and transport. And they also don't really understand why they're splitting it 3 times. And so I've seen a lot of where they come in and it's got 50 here, and then they'll put 50 here, and then they'll put 50 here. And then they'll even put 50 into the travel time as well, because they don't know what they're doing. They're just typing numbers in. And so this is the part that, yes, if you do want to have the ability to split this all out, which is going to be amazing for invoicing and stuff like that, with that comes the responsibility of your staff of also inputting that properly. But there is a way that you will be able to confirm it after as well. So you will be able to make sure before you approve your timesheets that you have got all the information in there properly. So yeah, we'll put that in, we'll hit save. And so that's how your staff will add the kilometers to the shift. So from there, the question then becomes, okay, we've added it to the shift. How do we see that on the shift while we're doing the timesheet report? So it will show the kilometer on the timesheet. Now, the kilometer, you notice that says 50 right there. That's the total. That's the amount that the carer put in the part that said how much do they want to be reimbursed for. Because this is a timesheet report. This is what you're going to reimburse a staff member. So that makes sense that it would show the 50 here. But then the question becomes what about the other kilometer? Like, what did they put in? So you can mouse over and it does put here that they added 50 and with a client of transport of 20 and travel of 30. So you can quickly check over with the notes and say, oh yeah, okay, cool, he's done that, looks pretty good. The other thing you can do is you can open up the shift and you can go to edit and advanced edit and you can quickly see here what's been added to the shift and all that kind of stuff. So yes, you are able to check over all that stuff. It is going to be important, especially as you start doing it, that your staff that are approving timesheets takes the time to check and make sure. And again, this is the other side of the fact that you are going to have more flexibility. More flexibility means possible more mistakes. So you just want to make sure your staff are doing it. The mileage allowance still works the same, by the way. So you need a mileage allowance on the shift if you want to reimburse the staff for the 50 kilometers that they did. Let's talk about the time. So we've got the we did have a field on there for travel time. So if your staff does put that in, that's talking about the time that the staff member took to travel to the shift. It's in minutes. So if they put 30 in there, it's going to charge 30 minutes. It's really important to note that is only for invoicing, okay? So it will only add 30 minutes of time to their invoice, it will not pay your staff the 30 minutes of time. If you do want to pay your staff for extra time, you would continue to do it the way that you're doing it. And there's a couple of ways people do it. They either create a second shift or they add an allowance here for provider travel for 15 minutes or 30 minutes, which will add a 30-minute payment on top of the shift, or they change the time of the shift to have an extra half an hour up here, in the staff section here, they might say, well, actually, I'll start paying them from 8:30. I'm not a big fan of that because your staff will usually rock up at the wrong time. So my general suggestion is to use allowances to do it, but there are a few options in that regard. So that's the provider travel time on top of that. Now, in terms of invoicing, what we'll see, and I can create an invoice for you to see it, is that it will show everything. So it's got here the kilometers, 20 kilometers activity-based transport. So it puts it in there for you, and then you've got the 30 kilometers of provider travel, and then you've got the time. This is the provider travel half an hour that I added to the shift. So it does add that as a separated line, which is really good. It's going to save you a bunch of time with invoicing and stuff like that. And then you've got the 1 hour of the actual service that I provided. So it split out those 3 different charges based on the shift that we had. So the next thing to talk about, that covers sort of a basic single shift. How does it work with group shifts? And that's the big one, right? This is the big reason why split mileage is really going to save you a bunch of time and trouble. So if I had 4 clients on a shift with 1 staff member, and that staff member said that I traveled 50 kilometers, you can, so when the staff member is adding it to the shift, there is a toggle on the mileage to apply to all clients. So you can either add individually. So if he was driving 1 client within the car and they did 10 kilometers, then you could put 10 in there and then go to the other clients and add 5 kilometers, and you can get really granular with it if you want to. Otherwise, there is a toggle to say apply to all clients and just put the same, like 10 on everybody and 30 on everybody, so you can do it in bulk. The same applies in the admin area here. So you can expand into each client and put specific kilometers, or you can do a bulk assign and you can say, I want to do all clients. We're going to do 5 kilometers of travel. We're going to do 10 transport, and we're going to put it on access community, and we're going to put a ratio of 1 to 4 because there's 4 people there. Or it could be, it could be 20, 30 and 20, again, with a 1 to 4 ratio. And again, there was 30 minutes of travel time and there was 4 people. So we'll split that between 4. So that will then update all of the clients to get a ratio of that. So that's how that works in group shifts. And again, if you have multiple carers, the carers are able to set their own, so they can say, well, I traveled 30 kilometers and I traveled 50, so that's it. And then you'll have to update the things. Now, you probably noticed in the app that the carers can't select the price books or a ratio. We had to find that balance where it was just going to be too much for carers. They don't know what price books are and why you would do ratios and how the ratios work. So we didn't add that into the app. That's all handled in the back end in the admin section. That kind of covers the feature all the way through. I think obviously I love a good Q&A. So I'm assuming that we've had a few questions.
There's been a few. Where have we got? Trudy's asked if staff are using a fleet vehicle and they still want to charge client kilometres but not reimburse the staff. Is that ended differently?
Yeah, so that's that whole thing about adding it's not changed from the way that we currently do it, which is that you just don't put a mileage allowance on a shift. So the mileage allowance is what triggers off whether you're going to reimburse a staff member. So if you're not going to reimburse them, you just don't put the mileage in.
Cool. Janet, hi Janet.
Hey,
Janet's
Jenna.
asked, how do you associate both price books with the shift code in the show travel rate section?
How do you associate both price books with the shift code in the show travel rates section?
You want Janet to expand on that?
Maybe, yeah, I'm not
I
really
can.
sure.
Hey, Janet, are you able to have a chat?
Actually, it related to a previous question that I'd raised on there, and Ian responded to it. Came back with a further question. It was regarding if you have different, like if you have a modified vehicle, which the claimable travel rate, kilometre rate is higher than a standard vehicle, how can you apply both costs in your when you go show travel rate? How can you
Yeah,
do
you still can't do that.
No.
So what you would need is you would have to have a copy of the group activities with modified vehicle.
Oh,
And
right.
then
So not in the show travel rate.
no, you would have to have a separate price book, and
Right.
then in that
Okay.
travel rate you would have it, and then
Right.
on the actual shift you would still charge the services under group activities, but you would specify the kilometers on that one.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I misunderstood Ian's response.
Oh, no worries. Cool. Thanks,
Cool.
Janet.
Sorry,
Thanks,
Paul.
Janet.
And thanks to Janet. She was very helpful with me with the beta testing and getting everything the way hopefully it's all good. We're obviously always open for more feedback. So, but yeah, Janet's been wonderful.
I think Janet kickstarted all of this
Yeah,
hopefully
exactly.
a while back. So
Yeah.
thanks, Janet, for all your help.
Janet's a narky client.
No, you're not.
No, we love that. All right. If a carer adds multiple mileages on the same shift, it will be the sum in the end. No. So that doesn't change as well from the current system. If a carer was to go in and add a mileage and say, oh, I just drove 5 kilometers, and then they came back in later and said, well, I need to drive it. I drove another 5. They would need to update it. So when they go to add the mileage, they'll see their original 5 still in there. They just need to update it to 10 if that was the case. It's not a case of adding multiple. It's always just the total. Will this feature only be available as admin access or be available to rostering access? Yeah, so I mean, when you turn it on, it's going to change it for your carers and what they see in the app. And then the stuff that I'm showing you here in the scheduler and everything, that's for like admins or anyone who has rostering access, correct? So it's pretty much anyone who has access to open up a shift like this and click in advanced edit, they'll be able to see all this stuff. I don't understand the difference between driver. Is it pre-arranged agreements with clients and the NDIS provider? We don't reimburse from home to client. The moment client is in the car. Yeah, that makes sense. So the moment the client's in the car to the end of the shift, that's activity-based transport. Not everyone charges for provider travel, which is that whole like getting your carer to the shift. The NDIS guide says that you are able to do that if you want to negotiate with your client or the plan manager and stuff like that to charge, because obviously it's a charge for you and your staff to get to shifts to provide services, but not everyone does that. So yeah, it's totally up to you whether you're actually going to use provider travel and just use activity-based transport. That's totally fine.
Thanks, Paul. Jody's asked, she came in a little bit late, wanting to know how they implement this on the system, whether they need to do an update, and also are they able to use the back-end administrative functions without that showing on the staff's mobile app?
So yeah, it's a setting toggle. I'd probably say we're going to send the recording out, so maybe rewatch, and we'll update the settings as well in our documentation when we send out the docs. But essentially, you have to be on a premium plan, and you go to account and settings, and there's a toggle to turn on the advanced ratio. If you turn this on, it will change the way your carers see it. There is no option to hide the new functionality. Again, we're open to feedback on that if we're finding that. Because I will say it is part of that I think needs to be carefully considered, is that your staff need to be trained and they need to understand what they're putting in. But at the very least, you need to, when you're approving timesheets, check the mileage to make sure it's correct as well. The hope there is that as the staff become better at it, your maintenance time and your admin time is reduced dramatically, because they start to input all these kilometers properly the first time and put them in. But I can understand the concern there. So it's something that we could look at. I think specifically I would love the option to hide the provider travel time section, because not a lot of people charge that, and there is no option to hide that, and your staff will generally type something in there if they don't know not to. When using a ratio rather than 1-for-1, does it automatically proportion those kilometers across the distance by the applicable ratio? So I mean, if you're doing a group shift and you would use the bulk assign setting to do that, and then you would put the ratio, but no, it doesn't automatically do it. You have to set the ratio for each one. But doing it in bulk means you only have to do it once, and it sets it for everybody. So it should be fine. Does the old features are still available? Yeah, so the old way that kilometers works is still going to be there for anybody who doesn't want to use this feature. Totally opt-in. So yeah, if you're happy with the way it works currently, you can continue to do that. If admin put the kilometers into the invoice settings prior to the shift, will be shown on the app. So yes, if you as an admin pre-write in anything on there, when they go to add the kilometers, those numbers will be shown there. So they can either update the numbers and change them if they want to, or they can leave them, or yeah. So yes, it will show when they go to add the kilometers, they'll see that there's numbers already written in there.
Paul Sonali's asked about adding a photo of the odometer when the staff are adding mileage to their shifts.
Yeah, so we currently still, there is an option to add the photo that's still there. So it's just at the top here, upload image. Having said that, you can only still do one image, which with odometers, it would be nice if we could do two, something we could look at down the track, but yes.
Cool. Janet's asked a question about the beta. They've noticed the mileage details that pre-exist switching the beta on do not always work. When you select all when invoicing, people may notice that when they still have mileage sitting as an unbilled on the client following invoice.
Yeah, there were some issues, Janet, when you switched from the existing to the beta, and I believe that they've all been resolved, so there shouldn't be any issues there. There were a couple of issues in the beta, which is why we do the beta, so hopefully it should be fine. I'm not sure what Robert's.
There's another one down, a couple down. You said a staff member will have to split it across 2 shifts.
Yeah, I'm not too sure what that means. Maybe.
Robert, are you available to chat?
Yep. Yes.
Hey, Robert.
Hi. Yeah. So if a staff member has 2 shifts and they have transport within those shifts, and they also have a 10-kilometre trek between shift 1 and shift 2, when they put their travel kilometres in, where do they put the 10? Do they put 5 in each, or do they, like, what if they put 10 in each? Where do we go with that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So most people that charge provider travel will charge the full 10 to the person that they're traveling to, so between the 2 clients. But having said that, there's also, a lot of discussion about, is that actually fair? Why don't we charge 5 to each client? Like, why is the one client, just because they happen to be second in the day, they get charged all the kilometers? So the answer is, it's really up to you guys how you want to do it and how you want to train your staff to do it. In ShiftCare, you will need to just either put 5 in each or put 10 in one. There's no, ShiftCare won't automatically split it between the 2 shifts.
All right. So then it's a case of training the staff to know
which way you want to do it. Yeah, exactly. So as a company, you'll decide how you want to handle it and then train the staff to do it that way.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Janet's asked about the ratio, and it's a really good point and really worth understanding. If you have multiple clients on the shift, there's 2 ways that you're going to do kilometers, right? So let's say that this staff member did 50 kilometers of activity-based transport. You can either come in here. So, well, let's make it simple. Let's say it's 40 kilometers of activity-based transport. You could either bulk assign, and you could put 10 on each person and have it as a 1-to-1. That's going to charge them 10 each, which means it's going to total 40. Or you can go 40 and put it as a 1-to-4 ratio, which is then going to do the same thing. I mean, price-wise, so on the invoice, it's going to show 40 kilometers at a 1-to-4 ratio, which is 25 cents per kilometer. So it's going to total that. Otherwise, if you put 10 in, it's going to show 10 kilometers at $1 a kilometer. So the price is going to come out the same, but the invoice is going to look differently depending on how you decide to do it. I personally, I like the ratio way of doing it, putting 1-to-4 in with 40 as a total, because that's the total kilometers you travel, but you had 4 people in the car. But you know, it doesn't matter mathematically. You can decide which way you want to do it.
Cool. Lindsay has asked this, I've heard of this one before. We have staff who use their own car and undertake pickup of group members before reaching their fleet vehicle, which is located at its base, and then picking up the remainder of clients and then using the fleet vehicle for the activity, and then the reverse for return journeys. And wants to know what would be the best way to manage the use of more than one vehicle and ensure that staff are only reimbursed for the element of driving their car.
Yeah, fun and games. So I think the important thing to remember here is that the provider, so when they're putting in their carer mileage, this is really just saying how much do you want to be reimbursed for as a carer. So they should only be putting in the kilometers here that they drove in their private vehicle in there. That's got nothing to do with invoicing the client. That's only reimbursing your staff. And then from there, so let's say they drove 30 kilometers in their own car, but then down here is when you would put the total amounts that you want to invoice the actual client for. So whether it's a mix of the private plus the company car, and you just put the totals in, and that will invoice them separately. Is the ratio available just on premium? Look, I mean, ratios in general are available on plans, but this whole invoice settings section is only a part of the split mileage and only available on the premium plan. So the ratio for kilometers, yes, it's only available on the premium. Is there a limit to how high the ratio can go up to? Yeah, currently it goes up to 20. That's just because we just had to choose a number, and we haven't really had anyone want to go higher than 20. We figured we'd cover enough for a bus. Hopefully that's enough for a bus, unless someone's got a massive bus. But let us know if that's not enough. Just to clarify, it will only be for carer travel from one client to another, and transport one used for activity-based transport within the shift. Yeah, that's the definitions of provider travel and activity-based transport. Yep. Yeah, training is the biggest thing about this, and this is why we have it as a toggle to turn it on when you're ready, because you shouldn't just go and turn that on today. You need to look over the way you're doing your shifts. You need to talk with your admin staff about it. You need to decide how you're going to handle ratios. You need to decide all this stuff, and then you need to show the staff the video on how to use the app with the new mileage, and we need to make sure that everybody is understanding what their requirements are, because yes, this will affect your invoicing, right? So anything that affects invoicing is always really key to be careful and make sure that you're looking at it, but also that double check on the timesheet. So it will add a little bit of time to your timesheet approval, but I think on the flip side, when everybody's up to date on this and doing it properly, it's going to save huge amounts of time on manipulating invoices and editing descriptions and having to like create, export over to Xero and then edit the drafts to change everything. It's going to change a massive amount of time in the long term, hopefully. Most people that have switched over to this have really found it to be a really great feature. So I'm hoping it'll help everyone.
Cool. Roderick, in regards to your question, can you just reach out to the customer success team? cs@shiftcare.com is the email address if you want to have a chat about your subscription and split mileage. If anyone wants to have a chat with Paul, you can also raise your hand. We can turn your microphone on rather than Q&A.
Can we make the recording available to some other staff? So yeah, we're going to have this webinar is going to be just on YouTube, so they can watch this webinar, and also we're going to have a video for how to use the app that's going to be available to your staff to watch as well.
All right. Janet is back. Hey, Janet.
Hi guys, just something I wanted to raise with the updating of the NDIS price guide, where you showed before that you ticked to say show travel rates and it's in as $1. That actually means that it's 1 cent above what the price guide allows. So it needs to be in at a maximum of 99 cents. So people will have to go through and because the price guide has it incorrectly. It has it as $1 per unit, but the way your system works is it multiplies whatever price you put in the price in your catalog here on ShiftCare by the number of kilometers that you enter into what you're just showing us.
Yeah.
Which means
so I mean, the price guide, the price guide doesn't have a limit on what you can charge for kilometers. It just says, well, no, it says you can negotiate a price with your participant, but we consider a reasonable rate. And I think they changed it to 99 cents. It was 97 cents in last year's. Yeah. So in my experience, and I onboard 4 or 5 people a day, everyone's charging $1 at the moment. And that's what they've negotiated with their plan managers and their participants. But yes, you're 100% right. If you want to stick to what the NDIS guide considers a reasonable rate, then you need to change it to 99 cents.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Cool, thanks. Cool. Any other questions? Does any more come through? Yeah, I mean, the dollar in the price book is the notional rate. Yeah. But yeah, the answer is that you can, if you haven't negotiated with the plan managers or the participant, then you should be charging 99 cents. If you have negotiated for $1, then you're good to go. And yeah, if you charge $1.09, then that's fine because that's what you've negotiated with your client. No, so the feature, when you turn it on, you cannot turn it back off again. That was covered at the start, but I think you missed the start. So yeah, this feature is irreversible. When you turn it on, you can't turn it back off again. All right, well, I think we'll wrap it up there. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time. I'll see you at the next webinar. Thanks, Andrew and Ian, for helping.
Thanks, Paul.
See ya.
Thank you. Bye.